So the four Brahmaviharas in Theravada Buddhism are not four scales that you can choose from. So, well, loving kindness is nice, but now I want to practice compassion. Or, okay, loving kindness, compassion, maybe that's fine, but I'm more interested in equanimity. So this is not the purpose of the four Brahmaviharas. This is not the way how you keep your proper attitude towards the four Brahmaviharas. The Brahmaviharas are successive levels that you can achieve as you gradually train yourself in loving kindness. First, we develop loving kindness. Then we can develop compassion. Without developing loving kindness, it will not be possible to develop compassion properly. Only when you have developed loving kindness and compassion, you can start working on developing mutual joy or altruistic joy. And only when you have an excellent experience, only when you have developed loving kindness, compassion, and mutual joy or altruistic joy very well, then you can start thinking about equanimity. So there are successive levels. It is not possible to choose just one of them randomly and start practicing the four. It is therefore very essential that we practice loving kindness, because only when you have excellent experience, excellent understanding, excellent training and skill in loving kindness, only then you can be successful in your practice of compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. We practice loving kindness in two modes, either the limited or the unlimited. The limited loving kindness, known as odhisaka mettā, but we could say also odhisaka mettā. So odhisaka mettā is limited loving kindness. It is limited to a certain amount of beings, either one or more, but not unlimited. Unlimited loving kindness, anodhisaka mettā, is meant for all living beings. There's no exception. Every single living being, including me, receives that loving kindness if we practice the unlimited loving kindness. The Pali scripture called Visuddhimagga explains 258 kinds of loving kindness based on this limitedness and unlimitedness. So it provides the different groups of people and groups of beings that can be the object of your loving kindness, of your limited loving kindness. Plus, it counts the different ways how you can radiate unlimited loving kindness. Loving kindness can be radiated with four kinds of thought. One of them that is most famous is peace or happiness. They're just two different words, two different ways how you can translate the English word sukha. So you can wish the beings and yourself to be in peace. Sukha. But sukha is just one of four options. You can radiate loving kindness with any of the remaining three options as well. And the scriptures take them on the same level, entirely the same level. You can decide which of them is more comfortable for you, and with that, you can practice loving kindness, unlimited loving kindness. So you could say there are four main kinds of unlimited loving kindness. What are they? First, may all beings, including me, be in peace. Second, May all beings, including me, be free from enemies. May all beings, including me, be free from danger. May all beings, including me, be free from suffering. So we have 4 kinds of thought that you can use for loving kindness. All of the 4 are equally. With all of the 4, you can get the same benefits. We speak of 11 benefits from loving kindness practice. And also, you can achieve with them the third level of absorption, which is free from applied thought and sustained thought, and it's also free from joy, but it still is dependent on peace and one-pointedness. Loving kindness practice, therefore, is not limited to just peace. It is also possible with freedom from certain kind of trouble. And that itself can help you to understand what actually is peace. So the scriptures do not explain what is peace, because the only explanation you find in our scriptures for peace is that it is nibbana. But we recognize 3 kinds of peace. We recognize peace in the body, peace in the mind, and then peace in nibbana. The scriptures do not explain in detail what is this peace in the body and in the mind, although they do explain in detail what is peace in nibbana. So we can realize that peace in mind is something absent. When the mind is absent, when the mind is free from restlessness. The mind is there, but what is absent is the restlessness. When you do not have restlessness, that means you have peace. When you do not have fear, when you do not have worries, when you do not experience loss, when you do not experience suffering, that means peace. Now, it is true that the 5 aggregates are suffering, panchupadana khandha dukkha, but that is on the ultimate level. In the relative level or conceptual level, there is a lot of pleasure in this world. That's why so many people still stay as lay people and do not become monks. So there is pleasure, and the Buddha understands that. The only problem with that pleasure, and the real problem with that pleasure, is that it is impermanent. Well, if the pleasure was not pleasure, then there would not be any problem, right? The problem with the pleasure is that it is impermanent. Not only that it is pleasurable, so we want it, but also it is impermanent. So we fully understand that pleasure is pleasurable. But we also understand the problem, that it is impermanent. It is not pleasurable forever. And the consequences of this impermanence are worse than the gain we get from that little time when the pleasure is there. Therefore, we gradually learn to detach ourselves from pleasures so that we do not experience the end of the pleasures, that the aftermath. So we do understand that there are pleasures in the world. We do accept that they are pleasurable. And it is because we accept that they are pleasurable that we do not agree that they are impermanent. We want them permanent. But they will never be permanent. So we search somewhere else for a different kind of pleasure. And the ultimate pleasure is any pleasure that can stay forever. If there is any pleasure that can stay forever, then that is what we want. And because there is, we have something to compare. Because we know of pleasure that takes forever, we compare that pleasure to the other pleasure that does not take forever. And therefore, we aim at the pleasure that takes forever, and we abandon the pleasure that does not take forever. That's the problem, that we cannot have both. You can either go on the scale of attitude, you can either go toward non-attachment and thereby achieve the eternal pleasure forever, or you go the other way, totally the opposite way, toward the impermanent pleasure. And that results in suffering. You cannot have both at the same time. They're two different ends of the path. So either you go that way or you go that way. If you want both, you will end up in the middle. You will get neither the impermanent pleasure nor the permanent pleasure. So when we practice loving kindness, we also understand that loving kindness is dependent on this world. As loving kindness is dependent on this world, we understand that it's just a tool. We use loving kindness, first of all, to create environment for us so that we can continue on the path. Think of loving kindness like a ladder that will take you up on a tree where you can pluck your fruit. You could climb the tree without the ladder, but you could fall and injure yourself, harm yourself. So we made this tree to make sure that our climbing on the tree will be safe and that indeed we will get the fruit and escape unscathed. If you do not make this ladder and you start climbing the tree, there is a chance that you can get your fruit. The fruit in Pali language, in Sri Lanka and in other countries is called phala. Not phala, it is called phala. Phala means fruit. And in Buddhist philosophy, we use it as the attainment of enlightenment. The freedom from greed, anger, and delusion. When you radiate loving kindness, when you practice loving kindness, you need to understand that it's just a tool for a more elaborate, let's say, for a deeper path. And that's the path toward Nibbana. It's the Eightfold Noble Path. Eightfold Noble Path does not contain, seemingly does not contain anything about loving kindness, but it actually does. First, you will learn about loving kindness from Samma Sankappa, the second factor of the Eightfold Noble Path. Well, that's the path, but it consists of 8 factors. That's why we call it Eightfold Noble Path. And the second factor, the Samma Sankappa, or some translate it as a right thinking. I translate it as right attitude, but probably nobody agrees with me. And this right attitude or this right thinking consists of 3 kinds of thinking. What is that? Thinking of letting go, renunciation, then the thinking of nonviolence, and then thinking of non-harming. Nonviolence and non-harming seem to be synonymous, but they are understood by commentaries as loving kindness and compassion, the second of the 4 Brahmaviharas. So you need loving kindness, you need compassion in the Eightfold Noble Path, and therefore you need them to become enlightened. If you do not have loving kindness, there is no enlightenment. Why? Because if you don't have Eightfold Noble Path, then there is no enlightenment. But loving kindness is part of the Eightfold Noble Path. Now, if you take, for example, breath, meditation on breath, sorry, not there. There is not a single mention, no way, not even indirectly, in the Eightfold Noble Path that you must meditate on breath. 0. But there is a very direct mention that you need to keep loving kindness attitude. Not only loving kindness, you need to practice compassion. There is no way out of that. Many people meditate on breath and they think that's it. But actually, breath is not it. It's not it at all. The Eightfold Noble Path consists of 8 factors. Now, the second factor, right thinking, contains loving kindness. But then we also have the eighth factor, the right concentration. Right concentration consists of 4 levels. We call them absorption or jhana in Pali, the first, second, third, and fourth level of jhana. You can achieve absorption with several meditation objects. We have 40 meditation objects on concentration, but not all of them will lead you to a jhana. Some of them will not lead you even to the first jhana. For example, meditation on the qualities of the Buddha will not take you even to the first jhana. And still the Buddha himself said there are 10 things which each of them, because the Buddha would always say there is one thing, but the Buddha said it 10 times. There is one thing that can lead you directly to enlightenment. And the Buddha said it 10 times with different objects. So we know that there are 10 meditation objects that can directly lead you toward enlightenment. And one of them is the qualities of the Buddha. Another is breath. Another is meditation on death. Another is meditation on the repulsiveness of the body, and so on and on. Loving kindness is not there, though. Loving kindness will not take you directly toward enlightenment, but it's a very important tool. It's a necessary tool which you use so that you can become enlightened. So in terms of the eighth factor of the Eightfold Noble Path, we definitely need concentration practice. You can develop that by breath, but you can also develop it by loving kindness. So loving kindness can take you, can resolve for you the need of non-violence, right attitude or right thinking, non-harming, because from loving kindness bring up compassion. That's the second level of loving kindness. And also loving kindness, if you practice it intensively, can provide you with deep concentration, which is the eighth factor of the Eightfold Noble Path. So loving kindness is very important on our path. It is also very important in the daily life. How do you make use of loving kindness in your daily life? Well, to get free from enemies. We don't want to have too many people who are angry with us. So loving kindness helps us to resolve that, or at least to reduce that. Even the Buddha had enemies. So how come we would not have enemies? But loving kindness helps us to reduce the number of enemies and to reduce unnecessary conflicts. There are 11 benefits of radiating loving kindness intensively, not 15 minutes a day. We're talking here about probably at least 6 hours a day of meditating on loving kindness. And if you practice on loving kindness intensively, you can get these 11 benefits. What are they? Falling asleep happily, waking up happily, not dreaming bad dreams, being loved by humans, being loved by non-humans, such as animals, protected by deities, invincible, or we could say resistant to any attack, fear, poison, or sword, or a weapon, having clear face, clear, calm face, easily concentrated. If you then start to meditate on any other meditation object, be it breath, Buddha's qualities, or anything else, it is easy for you. Then, dying peacefully. If you happen to die, you die peacefully. And finally, if the person did not achieve the full, the highest level of enlightenment, if they are not an arahant yet, then they will be born in the Brahma world. Loving kindness can be used in a way as vipassana practice, but then it is not really loving kindness. If you practice it as vipassana practice, then you just take those living beings as bodies and minds, and you allow these bodies and minds to bring about happiness to the conceptual person. Well, whether this is vipassana or not may be debatable, but it definitely, if it is vipassana, then it is no more loving kindness, because the person, this self, is gone. Therefore, you do not wish any person, anyone, to be happy, because there is no person included in your meditation practice. On the other hand, when you practice loving kindness, it cannot be vipassana, because in vipassana you remove this idea of self. So there are two different ways how we can look at the reality: the relative or conceptual, the absolute or ultimate. When you look from the absolute or ultimate level, you may notice that there are no living beings. Everything is just mechanic, cause and effect. And when you notice that there is just mechanic, cause and effect, then there seems like no reason for loving kindness. But we do not live in the ultimate level. We live in the conceptual level. So we need to relate to each other. We need to speak with each other. We need to eat, sleep, walk, stand, sit down. That all is conceptual level, not the absolute. So when we radiate loving kindness practice to all living beings, when we radiate to ourselves, it is good to have some basic peace. So we can achieve this peace through meditation on breath, through meditation on the Buddha's qualities, through meditation on muscles, but you need some peace in the beginning so that you can then share that peace. When you have achieved this peace and when you are sharing it with other living beings, in order that you live together with these 11 benefits that I have listed, you can dedicate yourself to special attitude. So it is very difficult to radiate loving kindness to one's enemy unless you have a set of tools. There is a set of tools how to deal with person who we are angry with. When we are angry with someone, we are also deluded. There is no anger without delusion. There is delusion without anger, but there is no anger without delusion. All anger contains delusion, and that's, I think, the main problem in anger. Because if anger was not deluded, then you could just do whatever you want with it. Because anger is deluded, you cannot do whatever you want. You are limited. You are constrained to the limits of your mindfulness, of your wisdom that remained when you are angry. The more you are angry, the less wisdom and the less mindfulness you have. The less you are angry, the more mindfulness and the more wisdom you can have. So it is very good to keep ourselves angry as least as possible so that we have some kind of control over the situation. If the anger goes too far, then the delusion is too much and there's nothing you or anyone else can do. So you could say, well, and what's the problem? Well, the problem is that you become slave of the mind. You become slave of that delusion. You have no power over that. You're a slave. So we don't want to be slaves. We want to be the lords, of the mind. So for this, what we can do is special attitude, is special kind of thinking. It is called a lot of thinking. That's the technical term, a lot of thinking. So a lot of thinking is a special kind of thinking that you use to deal with anger. It is the thinking where you, for example, think of the Buddha in his previous lives, how he was patient, how he still kept his loving kindness towards all enemies. So you remind yourself of the different stories. If you have heard them, that's good. If you haven't, I will probably tell them to you sometime, or you can read Jatakas and you'll find them out. So you need to know a lot of stories of the Buddha in his past lives, so that you know how the Buddha in his past lives was able to withstand enemies and maintain his loving kindness even to the most cruel people and cruel beings who wanted to harm him and who harmed him. So thinking about the Buddha to be and how patient, how loving he was, that should be inspiring for us. We are not expected to be as loving and as patient as the Buddha to be, but we are expected to be inspired by the stories. Another way how you can think is considering the Buddha's instruction on our attitude in loving kindness. That is, like a mother with her only son. So we are supposed to love every living being as if they were our only son and we were their mother. So previously, I don't need it these days, but previously when I was angry with someone, I would imagine that I hold that person in my arms as a newborn baby, as my own newborn baby. And then I would imagine myself as a newborn baby in that person's arms. And you would say, well, does Buddhism teach imagination? Well, it doesn't. But Buddhism is very realistic. How is it realistic? Because of so many past lives we had, it is very probable that anyone we meet was our mother one time and also our newborn child one time. And so when we think in this way, we are not imagining. We're just remembering what happened in the past. So you simply just accept the fact that one time this person who you are angry with was actually your newborn baby who you loved by your all your life. And also in one of your past lives, this person you are very angry with actually was your loving mother who held you in her arms and took care of you. Now, if it is true, if you take this attitude, then you always have a choice. This person I'm angry with did something bad to me. But at the same time, this person I'm angry with in one of my past lives took care of me in the best way. Now, how do I want to maintain this person? What is the attitude that I want to keep towards this person? I can choose. I can choose whether I will keep attitude toward this person as the one who took care for me as my loving mother, or to the one who now harmed me, because the person did both. And I can choose anytime I want which of these situations I will consider as more important for me. And then according to that, I can forgive the person. Okay, well, you were one time my mother who loved me so much. Well, so now if you're stealing all of my things, or if you're begging all my friends, well, who cares? I am especially grateful for you being my loving mother. And then hopefully we can forgive and even be loving. Maybe we can even love that person. So if we want to apply loving kindness in our daily life, we need to keep mindful. If you are not mindful, you will not realize that you are angry. And if you are, and of course, the anger may grow up to the level where you can really do nothing with it. Second, if you are mindful if you are mindful, which is really the key, if you are mindful, basically everything is done. If you're not mindful, nothing is done. So mindfulness is the key. But if you are already mindful and you notice that you are angry and the anger still doesn't go away, because it should go away, if it still doesn't go away, then you can apply this a lot of thinking strategy. And you can realize, okay, well, so this person one time was my loving mother, so now I forgive that person. Who cares? It doesn't matter. This person has been my relative for so many lives. In many lives, this person helped me. This life is not the lucky one. This person is not helping me in this life. Well, but I do not need to be angry with the person for what they are doing with me now, or let's say what they did to me an hour earlier. I can be happy with the person for what they did to me 200,000 lives ago. I can choose, because it's the same thing. It's both in the past. Well, if it's in the present, we try to resolve it in some kind of loving way. So we try to speak with the person, or try to find help, or we just go away. No problem. Compassion. When you have mastered loving kindness and you are able to radiate loving kindness to all living beings without exception, then you may think of compassion. Compassion is very hard. That's why loving kindness needs to be well developed, so that your compassion works. Many people in the modern world, when they learn about wars, they have mental difficulties just because they heard that someone else suffers. Why? We don't understand it in Buddhism. In Buddhism, we do not suffer because someone else suffers. If we do, it is a sign of attachment. So there is this case of the lady, I think she was called Patajari, who lost her husband in a forest. A snake bit her husband and her husband was dead. She had, I think, 2 or 3 children. I don't remember. She lost her 2 or 3 children as she was crossing a river. She arrived home and the house was burned to ashes and her family was dead. She didn't suffer. She didn't lose her hand or her eye or even her eyesight. She was perfectly healthy. She didn't suffer anything at all. But still, she was pretty sad. Actually, the scriptures say that she was mad. And then, as she was mad, she was running here and there naked. The people took her to the Buddha. The Buddha explained to her the problem of attachment. She realized that all suffering is due to attachment, well, basic 4 noble truths. And she became a nun under the Buddha's guidance. So we can see here that it is possible to suffer when we don't suffer just because we hear about another person's suffering. So in order that you do not happen, in order that you do not become like Patajari, you need to have your loving kindness very highly developed. Because when you start to think about people who suffer without good basis of loving kindness, well, then you can become mad. And that is not the purpose of loving kindness. So we practice loving kindness of compassion. So we practice loving kindness so that we realize that all living beings can be happy. With that peace and with that understanding and with that security in our stability of mind, which is the direct translation of samadhi. So when our stability of the mind is really high level, then we can apply the mind to compassion and train there. We can then consider all the different kinds of beings with all their different kinds of suffering. And we allow them to be free from that suffering. We do not force them. As much as we can, we help. Both loving kindness, compassion, and mutual joy, altruistic joy, have to be practiced by the mind, by speech, and by the body. The real loving kindness comes when you practice it both by mind, by speech, and by the body. If you just think about someone, may they be happy, but you don't help them, you don't give them anything, you don't tell them any kind word, then it is not loving kindness. Then it is self-deception. The same thing is with compassion and altruistic joy. If you just think that someone who's suffering may be now happy, but you don't help them, you don't tell them any nice word, sorry, it is self-deception, not compassion. So, of course, there are many people who we cannot help, but that's the case of equanimity, not of loving kindness, compassion, or altruistic joy. Equanimity works with those who we cannot help, but we will get to that soon. So, in loving kindness, we realize that all living beings are equally worthy of the highest and most loving and most genuine love and happiness and security and peace. In compassion, we are directing our mind to those who now suffer, to those who suffered in the past, and to those who may suffer in the future. Or we direct it to all beings who have not achieved the full enlightenment because they suffer. The ultimate peace is coming only with full level of enlightenment. So whatever way you take it, we are interested in the suffering of the living beings and in our permission, in our support that they do not suffer. It is sometimes difficult for people to understand why I say that we permit living beings to be happy. Well, we permit them because that's sometimes difficult. That's why we train that. When you are very angry with someone, then that also involves that you will them ill. That means that you wish that they suffer. And that means that you do not allow them to be happy. So when we train loving kindness, we allow all living beings to be happy, including those that are easy, that are obviously, of course, why would I not allow all of the elephants in the world to be happy? Why would I not allow all of the giraffes in the world to be happy? Well, certainly you would, but you take this possibility, this easiness of allowing all beings that you think are obviously eligible to be happy. You take this easy level and then you gradually develop it into the difficult level where you come to people where you realize, well, if that person suffered, I'd be a little bit happier. Those people are difficult. And you do not radiate loving kindness because you want to love people who you already love. You radiate loving kindness because you want to train in loving kindness toward those who you don't love. But that is difficult. So you need to go there step by step. That's why we allow all living beings to be happy. Not only those who we already have allowed, but also to those who are difficult to get our permission. So that's what we learned with loving kindness. With compassion, we are specifically interested in those who now suffer, and we want them to be free from that suffering. In the case of mutual joy, altruistic joy, we consider all living beings who are now already happy. They are either as happy as we are or happier. And this may be again difficult. It is especially difficult to wish all beings to be even happier than they are now. The main instruction is to wish them that they are further happy, that they are happy as they are now, so they can be happy like that further. But what if you wish everyone in the world to be even happier? Then someone may come and say, and I have already heard that kind of comment, you cannot have everyone to own everything in the world, right? But that's not my problem. I don't need to worry whether everyone in the world, all of these over 8 billion people, can own all of the gold and all of the pleasure and all of the good things in the world at the same time. I don't need to worry about that. It's about my attitude. Do I have the attitude that I allow them that? If they can do whatever they want, whatever way they want, am I ready to allow that? That all living beings would be the richest and most successful and most happiest and most powerful in the world at the same time? Do I allow that? That's the point. Not whether they will become. It's whether I allow them. So the third Brahmavihara is dealing with jealousy. Do I allow this person to be, do I allow this former spouse or former boyfriend or girlfriend to be with another person than me? Do I allow that? If that person is happy with the other one, am I also able to be happy like they are? Am I able to enjoy the fact that they are happy with the other one? That is extremely difficult. That's why you need to have developed loving kindness and compassion to a very, very high level so that you can dare to start meditation on altruistic joy. Then, when you have developed your altruistic joy, you are able to accept that anyone around you can be better off than you. And not only that you can accept it, you are happy of that. As you meditate, you can achieve first, second, or even the third level of absorption just by thinking, oh, this person is better off than me. Well, but in fact, you achieving absorption are always better off than someone else who has not achieved absorption, just by the way. But if we take it in the material point of view, if the other person is enjoying more riches, or they have got the company that you have founded, right? The company that you have founded, that person is the director and they kicked you off, then they are really better off, right? In terms of your company that you founded, and you are now no more the member because he kicked you off. But you can radiate altruistic joy and you can allow that person to be happy as they are now. And through that, you can achieve absorption and be better off yourself. When you have developed all of these three so-called noble abidings, Brahmavihara, noble means that it is very high, and abiding is a place where you live. And actually, all of these three, they are a kind of dwelling, the object. You actually dwell in the object. You dwell in the love. You dwell in compassion. You dwell in altruistic joy. Altruistic joy becomes you. You become altruistic joy. Loving kindness becomes you. You become loving kindness. Compassion becomes you. You become compassion. There should be no difference. You should impersonate compassion, and compassion should impersonate you. You should be one. You will never be one, but that's how it may be experienced. So when you have entirely mastered these three Brahmaviharas, then you can start to think of equanimity. Not because equanimity would be difficult. It is because equanimity is easy that you cannot do equanimity already in the beginning. Why? Because when equanimity is too easy, your mind will fall to equanimity and avoid loving kindness, compassion, and altruistic joy. That is the problem. We don't want to use equanimity as much as possible. Equanimity means that you take all living beings as just enjoying or suffering the results of their actions in the past. when you start to have just the attitude of equanimity without loving kindness, compassion, and altruistic joy, then you do not care at all. You do not help anyone. You do not need any kindness towards anyone. You do not need any compassion to help anyone with anything. You don't need that because, well, you suffer, you deserve it. Well, you're happy, you deserve it. And this carelessness is not good for you, and it's not good for society as a whole. So we don't want to resort to equanimity. Equanimity is a problem. As soon as you start to say, well, I don't care, they're just experiencing results of their actions, then they can say the same thing about you when you get into trouble. And we don't want that. So equanimity comes always at the end. Only when you are not able to help others by loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, by mind, speech, or the body, then you can start to radiate equanimity. But you do not radiate equanimity. Equanimity is empty. Equanimity is just accepting the reality as it is. When you achieve the absorptions, the first, second, and third absorption can be achieved by loving kindness, compassion, and altruistic joy. The fourth level of absorption can be achieved only by equanimity. That is because although our society needs and is entirely dependent on loving kindness, compassion, and altruistic joy, it is not so peaceful. It is peaceful, but it is not as peaceful as equanimity. So if you, in your meditation, want to achieve deeper level of peace, then you have to go through loving kindness. That's the first, second, third level of absorption. But then you leave the peace and move on into equanimity. And in the equanimity, you are in peace, although you are no more helpful in terms of loving kindness to anyone. So equanimity is always the last resort. We don't use equanimity as the basis. Our basis is always loving kindness. Equanimity is only the solution in case if you cannot help anyone by the mind, speech, or body. Only then you realize, well, okay, what can I do? Anyway, they suffer or they enjoy results of their previous actions. So this would be the case when you hear about wars, when you hear about conflicts, armed conflicts, you cannot help anyone in any way. And it really disappoints you. In that case, you can apply equanimity. If you are sure that you really, really cannot help anyone. We always can help one way or another. But if you are sure you cannot help, or if you are helping and you think this is not enough, I want to help more, then you can make use of this power of equanimity to maintain your IQ, to maintain your intelligence. We don't want to lose our intelligence when we help others. So to be free from hatred, we apply loving kindness, we apply equanimity so that we're calm and peaceful. And the more peaceful, the more calm you are, the more intelligence, the more thinking power, resolving power you get. So these are Four Brahmaviharas and how you make use of them in your daily life.